My husband looked me in the eyes and said, I can't keep lying to myself. Your sister is the one I really want. I said, then have her. 1 year later, I watched his entire world collapse in front of 80 people, and I didn't say a single word. The moment I want to tell you about, the one that makes me laugh until my chest hurts, didn't happen in a courtroom. It didn't happen in a therapist's office or in some dramatic confrontation on my front porch. It happened at a catered anniversary party, under string lights, with a champagne flute in my hand, and the best-looking man in the room standing quietly beside me. And the look on my ex-husband's face when he finally understood what he was looking at, worth every single thing I lost. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to a Tuesday evening 14 months ago, when I was sitting on my own couch, the one I'd picked out, in the apartment I'd decorated, in the city I'd moved to for him, watching Joseph stare at the television while he dismantled 7 years of my life in about 45 seconds. Part 1, the thing he said. I need you to understand something about Joseph before I tell you what he did. He wasn't a villain. That would have been easier. He was the kind of man women describe as sweet at first, then kind of aimless, then, once they're safely out, emotionally expensive. He had a laugh that made a whole room relax. He was late to everything and apologetic about nothing, and somehow you never held it against him, because he always had this way of looking at you like you were the answer to a question he'd been asking his whole life. I fell for that look when I was 26. A mutual friend's birthday party, a kitchen too crowded to breathe in, and Joseph handing me a glass of water like he'd read my mind. We were married at 28. By 33, I was working 60-hour weeks as a regional accounts manager, covering not just our mortgage but the community college tuition for the business degree he'd been chipping away at for 4 years. I was also quietly injecting hormones into my thighs and tracking my cycle on a spreadsheet and smiling through doctor's appointments that left me bloated and exhausted and occasionally weeping in parking garages. We wanted a baby, or rather, I wanted a baby, and Joseph said he wanted one too, and I had chosen to believe that. The IVF wasn't working. 2 rounds, 1 chemical pregnancy, numbers that made Dr. Priya Anand, our reproductive endocrinologist at Westgate Fertility, 12 years of practice, the kind of woman who delivered bad news like she'd personally written the manual on how to do it gently. Look at me with her hands folded in a way I'd come to dread. We're not out of options, she'd say, but we should talk about what your threshold is. My threshold. Like grief had a measurement, like heartbreak came in units. I was living at my threshold. I just didn't know it yet. My sister Ashley had moved back to the city 8 months earlier. That should be its own paragraph, because I want you to feel what that sentence meant to me back then. I was so happy. Ashley and I had grown up close the way sisters can be when they decide, somewhere around ages 10 and 12, to be each other's best friends. She was funnier than me, prettier, in the flashy way that Instagram rewards. The cheekbones, the effortless body, the ability to stand in any light and look like someone arranged it specifically for her. I'd always been proud of her. I was genuinely, actually proud. She started spending time at our apartment. She and Joseph had always gotten along. The 3 of us watched movies together, ordered in Thai food, laughed at the same things. She was good company. It felt like family was expanding right when I needed it most. I should have known. The body knows before the brain does. I started sleeping badly. I started finding reasons to stay late at work. I started feeling like a guest in my own living room. I told myself it was the fertility stress. I told myself I was projecting. I told myself a lot of things. Then one Tuesday in November, I came home at 7:14 p.m. I know the time because I remember checking my phone in the elevator, calculating whether there was enough chicken in the fridge or whether we'd need to order something, and found Joseph sitting on the couch I'd picked out, staring at the television I'd helped pay for, and something about the angle of his shoulders told me that whatever was about to happen had been building for a long time. He didn't look at me when I came in. I set my bag down. Hey, I said. He said, I can't keep lying to myself. The sentence landed the way sentences like that do, all at once and nowhere at the same time, like a sound you hear in a dream. I sat down in the chair across from him. I made myself breathe. About what? I asked. He was still looking at the television. It wasn't on. Ashley, he said. Ashley's the one I really want. There are things that happen to you in life that you think you'd react to in a certain way. You imagine the screaming, the throwing of objects, the total cinematic unraveling. What nobody tells you is that real devastation is quiet. It moves like water under ice, cold, smooth, going somewhere deep. Something went cold inside me. I looked at my husband, at the line of his jaw, at the hands I'd held for 7 years, at the man I'd injected hormones for, cried next to, built a life inside of, and I felt something very close to calm. Then have her, I said. He looked up. For the first time since I'd walked in, he looked directly at me. Wait, he actually seemed confused. You're just okay with it? I love you, I said. But my love clearly isn't enough. Take your things and go. He went that evening, texted me from Ashley's photo shoot. She was doing something with a small local brand, swimwear, very Instagram, to say he'd be back in the morning for his stuff. He came back at 9 a.m. with her hair tie on his wrist, her lipstick still on his neck, wearing her perfume like a souvenir. My mother called 24 hours after that. "Did you hear?" Her voice was bright and bewildered, the way people sound when they're thrilled and pretending to be scandalized. "Aren't you just delighted for them? 7 years, 60-hour weeks, IVF spreadsheets, and parking garage tears. I'm sure you'll meet someone new, sweetie," she continued, into the silence I couldn't fill. Ashley's just hard to compete with. I was so close to telling her about the baby. I'd taken the test 3 days before Joseph's Tuesday confession. I hadn't told anyone yet, hadn't even fully absorbed it myself. One of those thin pink lines that rewrites everything. Instead, I hung up. I miscarried 3 weeks later. The OB on call, a young resident named Dr. Castillo, who looked exhausted and kind in equal measure, said that stress was a significant contributing factor. She said it gently. She said everything gently. I drove home alone. I sat in my parking spot for 45 minutes without getting out of the car. And then I thought, okay, so this is what rock bottom feels like. Part 2, the sign on the door. It turns out rock bottom has excellent acoustics for hearing yourself think. I had no interest in dating. No interest in talking about my feelings to people who would look at me with that particular mixture of pity and relief. Thank God that's not me, that humans wear when someone else's life is falling apart. No interest in my parents, who had pivoted with remarkable speed from celebrating my marriage to celebrating Ashley and Joseph's whirlwind romance, like the whole thing was a feel-good movie they'd helped produce. What I wanted, weirdly, was to be tired, physically tired, in the way that sits behind your eyes and in your quads and makes everything else go quiet. I drove past Iron Republic Gym on a Wednesday morning in January. On my way to pick up groceries I didn't particularly want to eat. There was a paper sign on the door, "Cleanup crew hiring. No qualifications needed. Ask for Ray." I parked the car. I don't know why. Some decisions aren't reasoned, they're just recognized. Ray Kowalski was 61, a retired competitive bodybuilder with 4 arms that looked architectural and a personality that could be charitably described as aggressively no-nonsense. He looked at me in the doorway of his gym, me, in my work coat, with my post-miscarriage, post-betrayal, post-everything face, and said, "You look like nothing a six-pack and a glute workout couldn't solve." I laughed. Actually laughed. Not the polite laugh I'd been performing for weeks, but the real one, the one that surprises you. It came up from somewhere I'd forgotten I had. "I'll take the job," I said. "It's cleaning equipment and mopping floors at 5 a.m., he said. 6 days a week, pays $12 an hour. I know. He handed me a mop the next morning. There's a specific kind of healing that happens in a gym at 5 a.m., when no one else is around. The sound of the ventilation, the smell of rubber and iron, the particular quality of fluorescent light before the sun comes up. Nothing philosophical about it. It's just that physical labor has a way of using up the frequency that anxiety broadcasts on. I started training in the afternoons, after my shift. Ray corrected my form without being asked. He was not a warm man, but he was a precise one, and precision, it turned out, was exactly what I needed. One afternoon in February, I came home to find Ashley in my apartment. She had Joseph's key, helping him carry out the last of his boxes. She was wearing athleisure and perfume and the particular expression of a woman who is aware she is being looked at. She handed me a cocktail napkin. "You're sweaty," she said. "Stares are hard for certain people." Joseph laughed. The kind of laugh that says, "I know this is mean and I'm choosing it." I looked at her. I looked at him. I looked at the box in his arms. Our photo albums, as it turned out, which I learned later he'd taken to give to her. I didn't say a word. I went to my room, changed, and went back to the gym. That was the night Ray found me still on the pull-up bar at 9 p.m. "Go home," he said. "In a minute." He sat down on a bench nearby. He didn't say anything for a while. "You got a plan?" he asked finally. "Not yet." "Get one," he said. "Anger's good fuel, but it burns fast. You need something to build toward, or you'll just spin out." I stayed on the bar for another 10 minutes, and then I went home and started studying for my personal training certification. Part 3, What Gets Built in the Dark. The National Academy of Sports Medicine personal training exam is not easy. This is not a complaint. I appreciated that it wasn't easy. I appreciated everything that required me to focus on something other than the particular cruelty of watching my parents attend Ashley and Joseph's engagement party on Instagram, in real time, while I was eating soup from a can on the floor of the gym, because Ray had given me a key and I sometimes slept there when I didn't want to go home to an apartment that still smelled like someone else's absence. 8 months after the Tuesday that ended my marriage, I passed my certification exam. Ray put a bottle of cheap champagne in the gym fridge and told me not to make a big deal out of it, while clearly making a big deal out of it. 2 weeks later, a woman named Marianne Chen walked in for her first training session. Marianne was 58, recently retired from a commercial real estate partnership, and one of the most quietly formidable people I have ever met. She'd been an athlete in her 20s and wanted to get back to something that felt like her body was hers again. I understood that completely. We worked together 3 times a week, and somewhere around the 4th session, she started staying after to talk. I told her about my vision. Not a gym exactly. Not another Iron Republic. Something more like a women-focused community fitness space, with high-quality equipment, programming that wasn't designed to make women smaller, and a membership model built around what real people's lives actually looked like. Marianne listened in the way that people listen when they're mentally drafting a business plan. Her husband, Gerald Chen, owned several commercial properties across the city. One of them, an empty 4,200-square-foot building on Meridian Avenue that had been a yoga studio until the pandemic, was sitting vacant. Gerald offered me the space at 40% below market rate. I put every dollar I had saved, $34,000, 3 years of scrimping while Joseph spent freely, into the build-out. I slept on a foam mat on the floor of the back office for 6 weeks while construction finished, eating peanut butter from the jar and tracking every cent in a spreadsheet that I updated obsessively at midnight. Marianne brought her friends brought their friends. Before the official opening, I had a wait list. On the day we opened, Joseph texted me, being like Ashley won't win me back, you know? I was in Marianne's car. We were heading to a meeting with a commercial equipment supplier who was prepared to discuss a $150,000 financing package, which Marianne's investment group was prepared to back. I put my phone face down on my knee. I did not reply. 750 members in 8 weeks. I want to let that sit there for a moment, because I still don't fully believe it. The gym was called Meridian. It had a waiting list. It had a nutritional programming partnership with a local sports medicine practice. Dr. Tamara Rhodes, board-certified sports medicine physician at the University Athletic Center, who I'd approached with a formal proposal and a market analysis I'd built at 1 a.m. on a Tuesday. It had a corporate wellness contract with 2 companies in the downtown corridor, which I'd landed by cold emailing their HR directors with a rate card that Marianne helped me price. $50,000 in net profit in the first 3 months. Ray came to see it on a quiet Sunday morning. He walked the floor slowly, the way men who spent decades in gyms walk through them, reading the space, clocking the equipment, the layout, the light. "Ray," I said, "what do you think?" He looked at me for a long moment. "I think you were never going to need him," he said. "That is the closest Raymond Kowalski has ever come to sentiment, and I will remember it until I die." It was Marianne's nephew Dale who I want to tell you about now, because he deserves his own paragraph. Dale Osei was 35, 6'3", an Olympic-level weightlifter who had competed in 2 games and was now a structural engineer with a calmness about him that I initially mistook for distance. Marianne introduced us at her birthday dinner in September, under the apparent impression that 2 people who were serious about training would have things to talk about. She was not wrong. We talked for 3 hours. He asked questions that were so specific they startled me. Not the surface-level "what's your programming" questions, but the "what's your theory about why strength training changes women's relationships with their bodies" questions. He listened to the answers. He pushed back intelligently. He was impressive in the way that people who aren't trying to impress you are impressive. We were 6 months in when the invitation arrived. Part 4. The party mom texted first, then called, then texted again. Joseph and Ashley were having a 1-year anniversary party. 1 year, apparently, was worth celebrating when the relationship had been built on the rubble of someone else's marriage. The event was at the Harrington Room, a venue I actually knew because I had once considered it for my own anniversary party, before realizing that Joseph thought anniversary parties were performative. Mom called it a beautiful gesture and asked if I would come. I asked her why. "He wants to say something," she said, in front of everyone. "It's important to him." I thought about it for approximately 4 seconds. "I'll be there," I said. I wore a green dress I'd bought specifically for occasions when I wanted to look like myself, but the best version of myself, fitted, clean-lined, the color of deep water. My hair was down. I was 23 weeks pregnant, and the bump was visible in a way that was, I realized while looking in the mirror, going to be extremely apparent to anyone who had been following the timeline. Dale wore a charcoal suit. He stood next to me in the parking lot while I took a breath. "You sure?" he said. "Yes," I said. "You?" "I go where you go," he said, simply, like it wasn't a significant thing to say. We walked in together. The Harrington Room held maybe 80 people, string lights, white tablecloths, the particular ambient noise of people who are slightly overdressed and slightly overserved, and waiting for something to happen. I knew the moment we were spotted, not by Joseph, by my mother. She was at a table near the entrance, and her face cycled through 3 distinct expressions in about 2 seconds: surprise, calculation, and something very close to the look of a person who has just realized they miscounted something important. "Claire," she said. Her eyes went to Dale. Her eyes went to my bump. Her eyes went back to my face. "Hi, Mom," I said. We found a spot near the back. Dale brought me water without being asked. People I hadn't seen in years came over to say hello, and I watched them do the same calculation my mother had done: Claire, bump, man, timeline, math, and then produce various versions of a smile that I accepted pleasantly. Ashley saw me from across the room and went still. I gave her a small nod. She didn't return it. Joseph was at the bar. He turned around at some point, and our eyes met, and I watched what happened to his face in layers. Recognition, then the beginning of a smile, then the smile breaking apart as the context assembled itself. Dale's hand at my lower back, the dress, the bump, the fact that I looked by any reasonable measure like a woman whose life had gone somewhere. He looked away first. Then, at 8:47 p.m., he picked up a champagne flute and clinked it with a knife. The room settled. Joseph stood up. He looked different than I'd remembered him looking. Smaller somehow, in the way that people look smaller when you've stopped needing them to be large. He had the face of a man who had rehearsed something and was now no longer certain of his lines. Ashley was beside him. Her face had gone very still in the particular way of a woman who knows something bad is about to happen and is trying to look like she doesn't. "Attention, everyone," Joseph said. He had his public voice on. Warm, projected. He'd gotten better at it, I noticed distantly. "I want to say something." He paused. Ashley's hand moved slightly toward her abdomen. I noticed this, the way you notice small things when you've been paying attention for a long time. And then Joseph said, "The bump you see on Ashley's belly is not because of me." The room didn't gasp. It went silent in a way that was somehow louder than a gasp. The total collective cessation of ambient noise, the sound of 80 people simultaneously stopping. Joseph's voice cracked. "I'm infertile," he said, "which I found out 6 months ago, which means Ashley is pregnant with someone else's child. I will tell you what I saw in that moment because I want you to understand what 30 seconds of real-time consequence looks like." Ashley's face did not crumple. It collapsed. There is a difference. Crumpling is soft. Collapsing has structure, the sound of something load-bearing giving way. She put her hand over her mouth. She looked at Joseph with an expression I can only describe as the face of a woman who has been caught in exactly the lie she told herself she'd gotten away with. Her mother, my Aunt Patricia, who had called me twice in the past year to assure me that Ashley never meant to hurt anyone, stood up from her table and sat back down again. The room was still completely silent. Joseph turned. He turned to me. And I want to be accurate here, because I've thought about this moment many times. I don't think he planned what came next in the way that men plan things strategically. I think it was more like a drowning person reaching for whatever is nearest. "I love you," he said. His voice was cracking fully now. "Leaving was my biggest mistake. I'm never going to leave you again." He started walking toward me. I took 3 steps back. My hand went to my bump. Not staged, not theatrical, just the instinct of a woman who has a thing she is protecting. Dale moved forward. Not aggressive, not posturing. He just became more present, the way a man does when he has decided he is standing between something and something else. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. Joseph stopped. His eyes dropped to my bump, and I watched it happen. The real-time calculation, the math of it, the timeline spreading out in front of him like a map of everything he'd walked away from, the confusion, then the dawning, then something I have no name for, something I hope I never see on a human face again, because it is the face of a person understanding the specific architecture of their own mistake all at once. I kept my voice steady. I had been waiting a long time to be this calm, and I was not going to waste it. "Any communication goes through text only," I said. "In public, with other people around." He looked like I'd struck him. Dale's hand found mine. Warm, specific. There. We turned toward the exit and walked at a normal pace. Ashley was near the door, mascara down her face, trying, I could see, to catch my eye. For what? I couldn't say. Absolution, maybe. The particular thing that people who have wronged you sometimes want from you, which is the look that means we're still something to each other. I looked straight ahead, and then my phone buzzed. Part 5. The text unknown number. A single photo attached, and underneath it, 3 words. He told me. The photo was a screenshot, a text conversation between a number I didn't recognize and Joseph's number, which I still had memorized. The conversation was dated 4 months ago. "She doesn't know anything," Joseph's messages read. "She thinks I left her. She has no idea about the account. The other number? You need to tell her. Joseph, she'll be fine. She always lands on her feet." I stood in the parking lot of the Harrington room, Dale's hand still in mine, and I read the message 3 times. Then I forwarded it to a number I'd saved under Lena K. Do not delete. Lena Kovach was a forensic accountant who worked freelance for several family law firms in the city. I had been referred to her 3 months after my divorce was finalized by my attorney, Sandra Beaumont, 15 years of family law, the kind of lawyer who responds to your emails on Sunday mornings because she has already thought of something. Sandra had found something in the financial disclosures. It had taken Lena 6 weeks to find the rest. Here is the part of the story I didn't include in the party scene because I needed you to feel what I felt, the triumph, the clarity, the immense satisfaction of walking out of that room, before I told you what was actually happening underneath it. Joseph had a second investment account. I had worked 60-hour weeks for the last 3 years of our marriage. I had covered his tuition. I had covered 2 rounds of IVF. I had signed a joint tax return every year without reading it carefully, because I trusted him, because that is what people in marriages do when they believe they are in a real one. What I had not known, Joseph had been diverting a portion of my income through a mechanism that Lena described in her report as systematic transfer of marital assets via a jointly held business account I was not not informed was operational, into a separate investment account, in his name only, for 4 years. The amount Lena had documented, as of the date of her report, $87,400. Sandra filed a motion in September. The hearing was scheduled for the following month. The text I'd just received from the unknown number, it was from the other woman, the one whose number had been in Joseph's phone as T, the one whose messages I was now reading in a parking lot, understanding that she had been carrying this information for 4 months and had finally, tonight, watching it all detonate at that party, watching Ashley's face, decided that someone needed to know. Her name, I found out later, was Trisha. She had met Joseph at a networking event 8 months into his relationship with Ashley. She had ended things when she found out about the pregnancy, Ashley's pregnancy, and had spent 4 months trying to decide whether to be complicit in the silence. She decided, apparently, in favor of the text. I wrote back one thing: thank you. My attorney will be in touch. Then I put my phone in my bag, turned to Dale, and said, I want to go get food, somewhere with good bread. He looked at me for a moment. Yeah, he said. Okay. We went to a small Italian place 3 blocks away that I'd always liked and never taken Joseph to, because he found Italian food boring. We sat in a booth and ate pasta and bread, and I told Dale about the account and the motion and the hearing date. He listened with the particular quality of attention he gave everything, full, serious, without performing seriousness. Are you scared? He asked. No, I said, and I meant it. I was scared for 2 years. I think I used it all up. He reached across the table and held my hand. What do you need? He said. This, I said. This is fine. Epilogue. 1 year later. The hearing resulted in a judgment of $91,200. The account balance plus interest and legal fees, minus Sandra's commission, which was not inconsiderable but was the most satisfying money I have ever spent. Joseph did not contest it. Sandra said this was because Lena's documentation was, in her words, airtight in a way that makes contesting it inadvisable. What she meant was that he knew she had everything, and that the only path that didn't make it worse was the one where he wrote the check. The check cleared on a Thursday. I was at the gym when Sandra emailed me. I went and found Ray in his office, where he was doing something with a clipboard. Hey, I said. He looked up. We're thinking of opening a second location, I said. On the west side, Marianne's found a space. He looked at me for a moment. You want a partner? He said. I hadn't expected that, but when he said it, it made complete sense. Yeah, I said. I do. He nodded, like this had been decided some time ago, and we were just now formalizing it. Ashley and Joseph's relationship ended approximately 6 weeks after the anniversary party. I know this because my mother told me, in the same bright, bewildered voice she'd once used to tell me about their engagement, as if she expected me to find it equally thrilling. It's such a shame, she said. Is it? I said. There was a pause. Claire, Mom, I said, I want you to hear me say this once, and I want you to really hear it. I'm fine. I've been fine. I'm going to keep being fine. What happened to them is not something I feel the need to have feelings about. Another pause. Longer this time. I know I wasn't as supportive as I should have been, she said very quietly. No, I said. You weren't. It's not a fairy tale ending. She and I are still working on it. Some things that get broken stay bent, and you build around them instead of pretending they're straight. But she came to the gym last month. She took a class. She told me afterward, with some effort, that she was proud of me. I'm choosing to believe she meant it. Our daughter was born on a morning in April, during a thunderstorm, in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and coffee and something new. Dale cut the cord. He cried in a quiet way that he would deny if you asked him about it. Her name is Meridian. Yes, after the gym. Dale said it was the most obvious choice in the world. I held her for the first time and thought about the Tuesday evening that started all of this. The couch, the television that wasn't on, the 45 words that ended 7 years. I thought about the parking garage and the mop and the foam mat on the floor of an empty building, and Marianne in the car, and the sign that read no qualifications needed. My ex-husband once told me Ashley was more equipped for what he wanted from life. I think what he meant was that she was more willing to make herself small enough to fit inside the life he'd already imagined. She was better at performing the version of a woman that required the least from him. I was never going to do that. It just took him leaving for me to understand that not doing that was actually the whole point. Meridian makes a sound when she's sleeping, a small, contented exhale, like someone solving a problem they've been working on. I have spent more hours than I will admit sitting next to her crib listening to it. It sounds like enough. It sounds like everything I was trying to get to was this. Somewhere out there, Joseph is probably doing fine. People like him usually are. He is not the villain of my story. Or rather, he's the villain who did me the favor of being a villain early, before I'd spent another decade inside a life that was too small for me. He told me Ashley was the one he really wanted. I told him to have her. Best thing I ever said.